Welcome back to Multifamily Elevated. Really excited about our guest today and sharing with you this really amazing person. Her name is Susan Goebel. She is the CEO of Scaling Management Consulting Group. And with decades of combined experience across leadership, finance, operations, and growth strategy, Susan's team of senior leaders bring deep expertise in helping 7 to 8 figure businesses streamline, scale, and prepare for profitable exit someday. Her own road rash moment, receiving both a career achievement plaque and a pink slip on the same day, fall very, very nicely with our topic today. Bring on the road rash. And ignited her passion for building resilient businesses that don't just survive, but thrive. Now, alongside her exceptional team, she ensures entrepreneurs have the right systems, people, and strategies to create profitable, high-level companies that stand the test of time. So, I know you'll be as pleased as I have been with this interview, and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Multifamily Elevated. My name's Suzanne Hopson, and I am super excited to talk to you about vision, people, and execution, and how you can utilize this information to elevate you and your team and your experience in multifamily. Brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, giving you the latest and greatest news and content across our multifamily sector. So let's jump in, enjoy this episode of Multifamily Elevated, and enjoy the climb.
Well, let's just jump right in. Susan, so good to have you here. Welcome.
Suzanne, thank you so much for the invitation. I am pumped and excited to be here, especially since it's the beginning of a new year, a new season, season 2.
Right. Yes. And I'm really excited about our topic today, and that you really found that one interesting as well. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about in terms of road rash and how that can be a really great thing and really pertinent for people as they look back at their past year and are looking forward to 2025 and how to set themselves up for success. Road rash is not always a bad thing. We're going to dive into all of it. But first, I would love to have you explain how you got into entrepreneurship to begin with. Like, where did you start and why did you jump in and start your own company?
Well, we might as well just kick off with road rash stories because this is a good one.
Okay, let's go.
So I spent 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry. I loved it. I called myself a lifer. I adored the company. I loved the part of the country that I was in. And then one day I walked into my office and they presented me with this big, beautiful plaque. I really should. The number of times I tell the story, I should really put it behind me. And it said how great my contributions had been. And then in the next hand, they gave me my pink slip, which would not have felt so bad, except that 3, count them everybody, 3 executives had told me I was not going to be let go in round 1. And not only was I let go, but I was in the office next to the HR department. So I was the first person walked out of the building, which, is good in hindsight because I didn't have to wait hours for it to happen. But yeah, so when that happened, I really said to myself, I didn't enjoy how that felt. Thank you very much. And I decided I was going to hop into entrepreneurship. Because clearly that means I have much more control. Just so we're clear, this is the road rash part. That does not equal control. Entrepreneurship does not equal control. It certainly does equal accountability, just not control. And so I hopped in. 6 of us actually got together and we bought back a piece of technology from the company. And that other company that I stayed a part of for 3 years is still going on today. It's wonderful. It is thriving. It's fantastic. 6 people at the helm. That's a different road rash story. And that began my journey.
Wow. Well, I know a lot of people in multifamily and the prop tech that supports it. There's a lot of startups. Every year we see a bunch of new products coming out. And it's a rough game to really be a startup. And yeah, I know we could probably spend a whole hour on that. But we're just I think this is really going to resonate with people and, taking risk too. And it sounds like you were fueled, if you will, by what occurred for you. And that's really, that can be a superpower to lean on, that fuel that you get from an uncomfortable experience that you never want to experience again. You did say something which I think also would resonate. And that is about, taking the jump, but also you did it again. So what made you do it again?
So 6 people at the helm, if you can imagine, 6 co-founders, but 2 of the 6, I might be one of those 2, were not yes men. And so I realized that this was going to be nothing but friction. I love the people. I love the technology. We were in the space of helping to treat cancer in animals. So it's really heartfelt stories and great science, which I absolutely adore, but I couldn't do it. Life is too short to stay in uncomfortable situations that you can't change and you don't have control over. And so I said, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to hang my own shingle and I'm going to be a solopreneur. And so I did that. I thought I was going to stay in the space of science, but it had really not occurred to me that my skill set was operations, even though the words on my title weren't really operations, that's what I was actually doing. The entire 20 years of experience plus has been operations, and only the last 3 to 5 before I left full-time employment were actually titled that. And so I hung out my shingle, but nobody came to me for science and everyone came to me for operations. So I said, well, let's listen to the universe. Thank you very much. So I did. And then I stayed a solopreneur for a long while. I moved my family at one point from the East Coast to the West Coast because I thought I was going to go back into being a full-time COO, but that did not work out. Maybe don't move to the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest during the rainy season and then have a global pandemic. That does not offer the depth of experience that I've heard can exist on the Pacific Northwest. And so my daughter and I came back to the East Coast. And I was still a fractional COO for a couple of months before it dawned on me I was actually turning away business. And I said, well, that's just silly. Let's turn this into a small business. And so just like a lot of solopreneurs turn into small businesses, you're like, well, I'm just going to tack on this part and then tack on that part. And how do we grow? And how do I lead? And how do I change how I'm appearing? Because now I have a team. And it's not just a department. And it is a different mindset and shift, really, when you are going from being a COO to a CEO or a solopreneur to a small business. And that leadership skill is so important. Fast forward to now a few years after the pandemic, and I have an absolutely amazing and incredible team. I couldn't be where I am today and be doing what I'm doing without the team.
Yeah. I'm glad that you went back and put that part in because you're absolutely right. And I've had the pleasure of being on your team. So I've seen you in action, which is it's okay. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. And I'm proud of it actually. So, and just the things that I've learned that I've been able to apply in my business, it's been a tremendous experience to watch you in your leadership role. And I think you said something that applies to leaders that are moving into that position to begin with. We have a lot of people that are being promoted. And I see that emerging leader level of not being prepared, right? And not really understanding what it means to show up and look differently as a leader as opposed to one of the gang. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that really hits home for a lot of our people that are watching.
I love that. It's actually a great road rash conversation because my very first experience, I was out of university for I think about 9 months, not long. And the job above me as supervisor of the lab became one that was open. And so I and 3 other people put in their hat to become the lab supervisor. I got it over them. And the problem that ensued, I know you are doing this, and so many people should, because what I'm going to say, you're going to go, oh, of course. But I didn't have the seniority. They didn't think I had the expertise. I wasn't fully trained. It takes 3 years to be fully trained on what that lab did. But I had the understanding, little baby steps of it, for where I needed to go to fit into a larger strategy. What I didn't understand, though, was how to make that mindset shift between being one of the gang to stepping into a leadership role. Now they're not your best friends. You can't confide in them. You can't have those same conversations that you had the week earlier. And unfortunately for me, I did not have leaders above me or mentors around me to be able to coach me through that experience to make that transition. So we had so many hiccups, from dealing with team members who were abusing the system for paid time off, to not understanding my first budget that I had to do. They just said, get me a budget. And they didn't say, well, it needs to be this, that, or the other. And here, I'm going to coach you through it. So all of these different things that leaders need to do, that was a heck of an experience the first time around. And so having that mentorship and support, that would have made a very big difference that first year.
Yeah. And mentorship is in my world is coming up again and again and again. We've got some pretty powerful groups out there that really encourage mentorship. There's one in particular I'm thinking of. And it has become something that our not only emerging leaders, but our mentors themselves are putting investment and time into, because they see the importance of it. And I think there's a gap. Like, I'm seeing a gap between expertise and the people that can actually do the layers in between. So I think there's a real opportunity for people that have experienced that road rash to give back. And maybe this fits into to what you do every day as an entrepreneur, helping other companies with some of these issues. I know this comes up for me on, how do I lead the group? How do I lead the group but not do everything? How do I really maximize the talents? All of those things are, I guess, obtained as skill sets along the way. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of road rash, and as you spoke of, mistakes that I had to learn from. What are some of the other things do you think that you've seen along your travels in entrepreneurship that you think would help our group in terms of that, like that emerging leader? You're a new leader, you're in the seat. What's the first thing that you should really do before you do anything else? Is there a number one, or is it a series of things?
There's a few things I do. One is probably a mindset thing, and that's remember to remain curious. Because oftentimes you don't know everything that goes on for a process. A perfect example of this would be the case where a new leader comes in. This may or may not be a story related to me. A new leader comes in, assumes they know or understand that the process goes from A to B to C to D. But what they don't know in the background, that the people who've been doing the process for years know, is that there's a time lag. So while you're expecting D to have already happened and perhaps shipped, there is a lag in the back end that they have no control over. And so curious questions, rather than coming in and going, where is that? Why isn't that done? Can you tell me about your day? How did that go? Can you tell me about this process? What needs to happen? What's under your control or outside of your control? And some of those curiosity questions really will get you a lot farther in understanding where to solve problems. Don't just hop in and solve the problem. And I love this, and I'm going to give you a big pat on the back, Suzanne, because you talked about how to properly discuss issues. And the first thing was really about getting curious. And it was such a great reminder when you shared that. And so I want to give that one back to the team, because that's perfect. You have to be curious. Aside from that, understanding that leadership isn't necessarily friendship. Leadership needs accountability, and a crucial skill set I find a lot of new leaders in particular don't have is how to have that difficult conversation. Now I have to talk to my friend who's not my friend in this, I need to put my different hats on, and I need to hold them accountable for something that's not done. And that's a really tough conversation to have. I don't want to be blaming them. I want to remain curious. I don't want them to play the victim. And I also don't want to be a doormat. How do I manage everybody's emotion, mine and theirs, for a positive outcome? That is tough.
Yes. I'm thinking about some performance appraisals I've been through. Maybe on the receiving end of no radical candor or too much radical candor, giving radical candor the credit here. But yeah, very, very, very good. It is almost like, how we do sales training and we go over this over and over and over again for my group, leasing apartments, and we just get drilled with it. We're drilled with how to do it, what questions to ask. It's very methodical. And we don't do any of that kind of training we do some for interviewing, but not for like performance or difficult conversations, like you're saying. Wouldn't it be something if we could role play some of that beforehand? I know some of us do, but it would be really good to be able to get some feedback, back and forth feedback before you have that conversation. I love that you brought that up, because I do think that that's really hard, especially when you were at a level playing field and you aren't anymore. So,
sorry, I was going to say that does make it really, really tough. And if I can put in a plug, because I happen to love books. And so last year, one of the books that I read about this one that was really good was Adam Grant's Think Again. And so he was talking in that book about a lot of the different skill sets that are needed today that are even more important because of the speed of change. And one of them was the ability to not assume you know everything and to collect more information, put it into your mind, and think it again. Do I still come to the same conclusion, or do I not? Now that I have more information, was it good information? Were there questions I missed?
Yeah, he's one of my favorites too. I haven't read that book yet, which is really startling. Yes. Well, thank you. And, just for fun, if you liked this video, you're going to go into a pot. We'll pick one and you'll get this book. So yeah, podcast or video, all good. Yeah. We like to share good reads. Always a good thing. So a little bit of a shift back to taking risks and road rash. I'd like to go back into that a little bit, because I think, especially right now, I'm seeing a lot more movement of people taking a jump into solopreneurship, entrepreneurship, maybe a different job entirely that may require different skill sets. People are taking more risk. Now, there's a whole set of people that aren't, and I see that as well. But I'm feeling like people are motivated. I'm hearing more conversation about taking a little more risk as we move into 2025. Not as much as I would like to hear. I'm sure we need a year behind us to really see how the economy is going to go. But yeah, how in facing risk and measuring that against your belief in self, how did that play out for you? Did you have any doubtful moments about what you were about ready to do?
I still have doubtful moments that I'm on the right path.
Oh, I love this so much. It's so good.
Life is never, there's a great scene. I'm a space geek. I love that sort of stuff. And so I'm a Star Trek fan. And there's a great scene in Star Trek: The Next Generation where Beverly Crusher is attached from this little thingy on the back of her neck to Captain Picard, and they're trying to do something and get somewhere. And he's all being a captain, and he says, "Yes, we're going to go that way." And she pipes up and she goes, "You have no clue." Yes, but I have to appear like I'm the leader, right? And this goes back to, there are always moments where we will question ourselves and we're not sure. How do you make the decision? How do you feel comfortable? How do you get to the point where it's fail fast and get back onto a different track? And so, yes, I never have left the fact that occasionally I won't feel very confident. But in looking at decision making and approaching that risk, how do you do that? Well, I'm an epidemiologist, so I like my data. That's my training, that's my trade. But I'm also sitting in the visionary seat. And so the ability to go fast, but not get caught in analysis paralysis. And I will have my cohort of favorite people to ask different questions so that I can gather information, back to thinking again. What am I missing? What am I not seeing? How can I de-risk what I'm about to do? Because being an entrepreneur means sometimes that you take on more risk, but the more successful you are, you learn how to mitigate those different risk elements.
Wow. And what I really love about what you're saying, Susan, is it follows a methodology, like almost a process of how you're thinking as you are facing some of these things that are coming your way, like doubt, and you're bringing it in and you're asking these questions. You're going to other people that you trust and that, will give you the truth. And, in talking with some other people that have started businesses, that's hard too, right? Like, how do you find someone that's going to tell you that you're wrong or that you might be making a mistake? Yeah. When you're at the top.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I want to say something you just said back to the audience, because it's really important. How do you find somebody who will tell you the truth? And the truth couldn't, a lot of people will give you rosy sunshine, but what you're looking for are those people who've been there, done that, and they know the challenges that you're going to face.
Yeah, I think sometimes people are afraid. Like, they're afraid to seek those people out. They feel like it'll affect their confidence, or they don't want to appear stupid. I know I've heard people say that. Well, I'm going to this person and I might need something from them at some point, and I'm telling them that I don't really know what I'm doing in this particular area. Do I really do that? But they're the one that knows how to do it. Like, they're the who, right? Definitely need the who here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another book reference.
Yeah, exactly. Who is a great book, isn't it? Oh my gosh. So you're talking all about not appearing stupid. And I was just having a conversation this morning with my COO. And last night I had finished building, and so you'll laugh. I'm trying to understand a little bit more. I don't come out of the computer science side of things. So I needed to understand AI a little more deeply. And the way I learn and like to do that is to try and do things myself, because then you'll figure out, well, what are when somebody else, I'm going to hire them to do this, then what will I need to give them? What assumptions will I not need to make, sort of thing. And so I built a bot, an AI bot, and I was very excited, but I needed a beta tester. So I asked Jill if I could use her information to test out this bot. But in doing so, I know she also likes to learn things different ways. So I shot a loom. And during the course of the loom, it was a 9-minute loom. It was like supposed to be 2 minutes. It was not 2 minutes. Like, please tell me you are watching this at like 2x speed. Exactly. And so we were talking this morning. She says, I love the fact that you couldn't find things on there. You were going backwards and forwards on this loom. You were saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't find this for you. I'm so sorry. I mean, I looked like a moron. If anybody else was watching this, that's okay. It's a learning process. You don't have to take yourself seriously. I'm pretty sure Jill does not think worse of me because I look like a moron on that.
Oh my gosh. I love it. It speaks to vulnerability too. I mean, you have a very trusting relationship. I'm sure that it took a minute to get to that point. But being vulnerable as a leader, we talk about this a lot too. And that can be difficult in lieu of looking like you know what you're doing. Yeah, how have you found that to be for you?
Yeah, that's not an easy one for me. I don't like vulnerability. I'm a perfectionist, and I like to come across very confidently. I like to be the Captain Picard. And so I really had to take that moment to go, you know what? It's actually okay. By the way, I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. I just need some help. And when you do that and you say, look, I think it's this, but I really don't know for sure, people are more willing to give you the space and the grace than when you just go, listen, this is just it. It's always this way. And they find you rigid at that point or cold. And so it has taken a lot of time during the last year. And this is something that people with teams, even if they're smaller teams, can really take advantage of. Get to know the team members. Find the way to bring in some of that outside coaching to make sure that the relationships continue to be healthy. Because the one thing that will undermine are those unspoken road rash moments that they're having that you have no idea about. Because they have not said it because you're the boss. They don't want to lose their job. There's a fear factor for them that you don't see. You know, my COO and I have a very good dynamic relationship. We're very vulnerable with each other, and we like to laugh about it, because if you can't laugh about it, that's just way too serious for us. And so being vulnerable, it was something I learned from her about the benefits.
There was so much in what you just said that I think is worthy of unpacking. But thank you for sharing that. I had no idea that that was a difficult thing for you to do. It's also difficult for me. I have to push myself to do that as well. So I'm relating very much to that. But what I really find fascinating about what you said is a totally different way of approaching your relationships with your teammates that can, I think, open doors and also not just help with communication, but job satisfaction and, people feeling like they can contribute because you're listening in that way. I think that was really, really profound, and that they're dealing with their own road rash that you're not aware of. Yes, oftentimes we get wrapped up in ourselves and how we're coming across, and your other person on the other side of the table is going through something or is experiencing something that could be contributing to how they're showing. Very interesting. How do we get to that level with someone, especially when speed's a factor, Susan? Like, you don't have time to mess around. You've got to get something done with your team. And how do you do that, like, effectively when maybe not all the trust has been built yet?
That's a tough one. Really, and part of that comes down to, do you take the time at the beginning of your meetings to have that segue? And then do you follow up? So I used to do this with some of my teams. As a new leader coming in, I would listen to the segue moments. Now, for anyone who's listening that doesn't know what a segue is, when you come into the meeting, there's always that transition period between being outside the meeting and coming in and being focused on the job at hand. And there's a nice way to do that transition that's very focused on being a human first and talking about what's going well. Or if you have a challenge, speaking that challenge. And if it's personal or if it's professional, I used to make sure I wrote down at least 3 of them on every meeting. And I would follow up with that person. Hey, congratulations on that. Fill in the blanks. Ooh, I heard that you had a challenge with this, and I think I might have a 5-minute give on that. Do you want to talk? And so being able to build those little pieces that make sure they know I'm a human being, you're a human being. I can absolutely respect that. And we have a job to do. I think those were the building blocks that made it go a little faster.
Yeah. Well, that's very concrete. That's a very concrete example. So thank you for that. I think those are really, really useful. So regarding disciplines and habits and all of those things that we get into and get better and better at as we get older. I'm speaking about myself. What are some specific habits or practices that you've leaned into or relied on over the years that have helped you to, just really, contribute to your long-term success? What are some of those disciplines or habits?
I think one of them was learning about how to deal with failure, because we all fail. And when that happens, what you do is important. And so road rash, and I don't mean this to say it literally, but it might sound it. I used to be a marathon runner. I promise I didn't fall. It's not road rash official moment.
It's not actually road rash. Okay.
But when I was racing, so I'm older, I don't race as much anymore. And so when I was racing, I would always have a goal for that race. I want to do a personal best. I want to do a 10K in this time. I want to do a marathon in that time, whatever it was. And I had a running coach who was absolutely amazing. I came home one weekend and she asked me how it had gone, and it was a horrible race. And she turned to me and she said, okay, so it was a bad race. How long are you going to stew on that? And I looked at her and I went, huh? She said, well, when I talk to my husband, I usually say you get 24 hours to feel bad about that, and then you need to pick yourself up and get going. And it is one of those things, take the moment to feel bad. When I got laid off, let go, terminated because the division was being shut down, that didn't feel good. But how long are you going to give yourself? How long are you going to stew in that before you actually go, okay, I know what my challenges are and I know where we need to go and how we need to get there. Now I need to flip out of victim mode, out of woe is me, and into making it proactive. And it goes back to having those difficult conversations with your team members as well when they've had a failure. Because a lot of us are harder on ourselves than other people are on us.
Oh, repeat that one. We can put it on a t-shirt, possibly a coffee mug. Nah, it's true. It is very true. And I think you're right. The stuckness that can happen if we spend too much time in the woe is me. And I've done it, self-admittedly, and that's time. And time is very valuable, especially as it's speeding up, it seems. It's even more valuable.
Exactly. And it does feel like it's getting faster and faster. And the speed of change, if you stay stuck too long, the speed of change will keep going and it'll be harder to catch up.
Yeah. So it's an interesting world. I use that word because it's different for everyone that's, out there experiencing what they're experiencing. But what do you think are some of the really big challenges right now for entrepreneurs, for leaders? What do you think is really front and center?
I honestly think that one of the biggest pieces is going to be AI and automation. The way the world is shifting and changing has great things associated with it and a lot of things that bring about fear. What about protecting my privacy? Is that going to take my job? Ooh, look, that made me more efficient. Oh my gosh, that was so cool. The speed at which that is changing and the world and how we're doing business, to keep up as a leader, to keep up in terms of managing your team, to keep up as a business owner can be very tough. Road rash moment, if I can call it that. So 2 years ago, 2 years ago, we had a front end to our business. We had a really great, successful front end to our business. $500,000. Under 3 months, it was gone. Do you know what we figured out? It took us 6 months to figure this out. But do you know what killed it? AI. Just gone. Because people had switched how they approached things. They no longer wanted what we offered. They now were taking it on OpenAI and Gemini and all of these different things. And it was less than 3 months to lose that business. That's a tough thing to do. How do you recover as a business owner? How can you pivot? How do you keep up with the speed at which we're doing things? I mean, now I am talking about AI bots, which is also automations in AI, and we're building things into our websites that are things we would never have considered 2 years ago. So it crushed us. We recovered, and now we're trying to use it to our advantage and help our clients to use it to their advantage and the team members to use it to theirs. But it's a tough one, and it changes rapidly.
Agreed. I find myself entrenched in it continuously, and it's either for a client, for my own business. There's a group of us that just do it for fun. Like, we're just figuring it out because we love it and we're enjoying it. But there's the fear factor, and there's the, what if we don't use this properly? I'll give you an example that just happened to me this morning. I did an avatar of myself, and it was just a sample. I wanted to share it with my tech person on my team, Steve, because I knew he'd appreciate it. First thing out of his mouth was, well, if they can take your face and do that with it, they could do anything with your face. And the information could be something that you wouldn't want to endorse. And I thought, okay, well, there's a whole nother thing to think about. And I know that that's a big thing for us right now, which is, what are the regulations that you're going to have in place for your business for AI when there's so much unknown? Are you dealing with a lot of that too? Like how to contain it at all? I know we're trying to figure it out, but what about containing it? And are you hearing that from clients too?
We are. And there's interesting ones. So LinkedIn, for example, I've heard from people, whatever your profile picture is, make sure it contains only a portion or a side view of your face so that they can't take a whole image and use it as a biometrics thing. And I'm like, wow, that's way out there. To the automation pieces that allow that, the executive assistant or the researcher to be able to do something where their job was starting to creep up above that one full-time equivalent. And now it's back down because they're able to manage. They're not doing the things that are automatable. They're doing the human things, the things that they actually should be doing that you can't have AI do. And then the question is, well, okay, I know on ChatGPT, for example, I've gone into the settings in the background and investigated the privacy stuff. I've toggled off, you can't use my data to train your model. And I've done that across the board. But I didn't even realize before I started looking for some of that to even ask the question until somebody asked me, and then go in and go, well, I wonder where that switch might be. How buried is it? Right? And how do we make sure we protect our clients' data? It was an interesting conversation. I'm part of a group, and this was the conversation about all of this when we're talking about building AI bots. And I was concerned about it because some of what we do contains sensitive information. And as they said to me, but if you only take a number, you know what the number means. But if you only take the number and the bot only sees the number without the context, does it matter as much? Okay, but then you have to set things up that way, and you have to know to ask those questions. And that's where I'm playing around, because I want to be able to coach the clients on how to ask those questions. They don't have to be specialists in building bots. There's lots of people out there who can do that. But being able to set the project up for success and make sure you're protecting your data when not every consultant, not every person has the experience. There might be some skills gap or some knowledge gap, or they just don't care.
Wow. And that really, I know, will resonate with our listeners. This is a big deal for everyone, really. This is for all businesses, and it's just in every conversation. There's a lot of focus on having someone with some expertise in your sphere to be able to help navigate it. And usually it's several people. To your point, people have different expertise. But yeah, it's, it provides opportunity too. There's a lot of people that are going to become experts business. And that's going to be, great. It's a great new job. The automation part and, the role specialization, as I call it, that's also, there's a lot of talk around matching people with their gifts and talents more appropriately and using their best skill sets to get things done. Very exciting stuff. And probably a whole other hour that we could talk about all of that, Susan. There's like so many ways to go with all of this. It's so, so good. But we got to wrap it up. So what I'd like to do is maybe just get a piece of advice from you that maybe would help someone that's about ready to take that entrepreneurial path. What would you say to them? Piece of advice with maybe a little bit of road rash in there. What would you say?
Stay the solopreneur as long as you can until you know and understand what systems you actually need to build. Because one of the biggest areas of risk in growing companies are the pivot points. Solopreneur to scalable model, small business to a medium business. And if you can really get the understanding of what gaps you have, then you can avoid a lot of the challenges that I see other solopreneurs do, which is, hey, I got so busy, I just hired that person, Bob, or, Susie or Sally or my uncle or my next door neighbor. I've done that, by the way. I did that. And keep the profitability while you are growing, because that is one of the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs face is when they do hit that pivot point, when they decide to grow, the money disappears that funds what they need to live on. And there are ways to do that growth where you don't put yourself in jeopardy.
Wow. That was really, really good. And a whole nother hour. I can feel it. For sure.
I've seen that one more than a few times if we want to talk about that particular pivot point.
I'm listening. I am listening very, very closely. I think that's a great conversation. I just want to thank you, Susan, for sharing your road rash with our audience today from a different perspective. I think it's just incredibly gracious of you. I'm so appreciative. So thank you very much for coming on today and making me laugh and made my face hurt a little bit, especially pre-show. It's really good. But thank you.
Suzanne, it was my pleasure. And you are an amazing person, a wonderful host, and you have a great deal of skill sets that are available that will help your clients and your listeners. And so I hope they reach out and they ask you good quality questions because the depth of skill is amazing. So thank you for allowing me to have some fun this afternoon. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you, Susan, so much. I know we'll be talking soon.
We will.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for tuning in to Multifamily Elevated, where we hope that you are inspired and ready to go, elevated to take on your next challenge in multifamily. So if you liked this episode, please subscribe, like, comment, and of course, share with your network. And don't forget that this was brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network that is also sharing the latest and greatest in trends, ideas, and content across our multifamily space. Until next time, keep elevating, and we'll talk soon.